Gospel reading for this day comes to us from St. John, the 13th chapter, as we once again join Jesus and the disciples at the Last Supper after he had just washed their feet. That when Judas had gone out, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him at once. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Why are we here? Why are we here? Now, I know you might be thinking, well, I'm here to help recognize my family member who's celebrating a milestone in ministry. Maybe you say, that's why we're here. Or, Pastor, I thought this is kind of the normal time for worship. I thought this was kind of self-evident. But the question I ask is a little bit deeper. That why are we here? I'm talking Calvary Lutheran Church and School. Why are we here? What is our calling? What is our purpose? What is our place within this very community? That why are we here? That I think in our gospel and our reading from Acts today is that we get into that very question of why are we here? See, today I want to talk about two reasons and two realities that I see at work in our text for today. That there are two reasons of why we are here. That first reason of why we are here is that we are here because of that good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That we are here, just as we said just a few moments ago, that it is not by my own reason or strength that I can believe in my Lord Jesus Christ, but it is by that power of the working of the spirits. It is by that working of Jesus Christ. It is because of the work of another that I am here and we are gathered here today. That why are we here? For the very reason that Jesus Christ, so many years ago, said things and did things that changed people's lives. Who did things that seemed so outlandish, so loving, so compassionate, and also yet so mind-blowing, that they didn't have categories to understand of what he was saying, but they saw the very way of just how compassionately, just how lovingly that he did what he did. I mean, just think about the very ministry that Jesus was all about. That Jesus left everything that he had and everything that he was and everything that was there, and he now stepped into poverty. He now stepped into that working class. He now stepped in to that very place that after growing up in a no-name town in the midst of all of the things, is that Jesus left what little career and money he had to continue to go and serve a people that though they would receive him at first, that they received him for healings and miracles, they looked for signs and wonders, and when he went his own way, they turned against him. I mean, just look at our gospel reading today. Jesus has spent 3 years with his disciples doing mind-blowing things, and still this is how he is received. That after Jesus now knows that his time has come, he sets aside his outer garment and takes a towel and a bowl, and he approaches his disciples to wash their feet, to show exactly the kind of ministry that he is about. And what does Peter do in response? Peter refuses. Lord, you shall not do this for me. Had Jesus done nothing to gain his trust? Had Jesus shown him nothing to somehow show that he was still the one in control, and yet Peter thought he was the one setting the agenda, calling the shots, and he was going to be the one to tell Jesus what he could or couldn't do? But I'm glad that we're above ever telling God how he should be running our lives. I'm glad that none of us ever think that, God, if you really love me, you would. And yet we have every reason, just as Peter did, to trust. And yet sometimes is that we do some of the same things. And then after Jesus has washed them, had spoken to them, cared for them, and speaks to them about the very things that he is about to do, once again saying mind-blowing things of what is yet to come, how does Peter then respond? Shortly after our text, Peter says that, Lord, you know I will die for you. I will give my life. Now here's the question. If you were in Jesus' place, how would you respond to that kind of word of wisdom? Oh, really, Peter? You're going to die for me, huh? You're going to go ahead and take my place for me, and you're going to save all of these people, right? Is that you are going to be the one who dies for me. Let me tell you, Peter, of how I know things are going to go. Yet this night, you will deny even knowing me 3 times. That I cannot, by my own reason or strength, not only believe in Jesus, but come to him, is that he is the one who has done the work. He is the one who has gone the way. He is the one who died in my place, and he is the one who has gone to his cross to give us the gospel grace. That is why we are here, because he is the one who has the control. He is the one who calls the shots. He is the one who has a mission, who has a purpose. And when he came, he fulfilled it. But the fact is that mission is not done. That work of God has not finished. That as Jesus will go on later in the Gospel of John to say that as the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. See, in our reading today from John 13, what do we hear Jesus say? Little children, yet just a little while I am with you. That you will seek me, and just as I said to others, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. That it is not your time. It is not your place. It is not the hour for you. That I now go to my cross. I now go to that very place, to my resurrection and my ascension, that I now go to be with the Lord. But you have a place and a purpose. That though you may seek me and desire to have me physically here, even though I am with you to the end of the age, though you may want me to step down into all of those places of your life and finally bring it all to its close, is that you must know that I am leaving you here for a reason. And what is that reason? That why are we here? Is that we are here because of the gospel. But we are also here because of that mission of God. That He has called us and placed us and put us where He desires us to be. And what does He then say to us? Is that He says to us those words, that a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. How well are we doing at loving the way that Jesus loved? I want you to think, when was the last time that you truly sacrificed? I'm talking of giving of your time, your effort, of going out of your way for someone who is not your spouse, not your child or grandchild, not your parent. Where do we go out of the way to love one another? So I think too often we are cut to the heart of Jesus has showed what kind of love He has for us. That though, like Peter, we often refuse to go where we want to go, where He wants us to go, that like Peter, that we are so often pledge our promises and speak big, very hopes, and yet fall so desperately short. But Jesus still comes again and again. That Jesus still comes and speaks to us that very promise. That He is with us. That He is working among us. That He is the one who is still there at work among us. For that first reality that is there is that He calls us to love one another. That within this church, He calls us to relationships and vulnerability. He calls us to take that dangerous reality of stepping across the aisle and saying, I don't think we've met. Or that dangerous reality in the midst of our small group Bible study, or in the midst of our small group conversations, or in the midst of people that maybe we have attended church here together for 10 or 20 or 30 years, of taking that audacious move of stepping across to them and saying, I'm not okay. Things are not all right. That are we willing to be vulnerable with one another? Are we willing to have relationships with one another? Are we willing to step across the aisle and say, I don't know you? Can I get to? Why are we here? That we are here for the very fact that community is what Jesus has called us to. That we may celebrate the very opportunities of while we are away or because of those times that we cannot get together, that we have things like technology, that we have things like streaming, that we have things like that, but it does not substitute the real relationships of life together, both here in this building and out there in our Bible studies and out there in this world. So Jesus comes to us today and asks that question. For the sake of my mission, will we take that even first audacious step across to somebody here within our own midst? But Jesus does not end there, as he goes on to say in John 13:35, "By this all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." By this the world will know. See, that's our mission. That just as Jesus came, not to huddle in a corner, not to hide it under a bushel, no. But what does he do? That he comes that the world may know the good news of what he has done. And he sends us with that same mission. That why are we here? Are we here for one another alone? Are we here simply for this building? Do we spend too much time worrying about what is coming into this place? Do we spend too much time worrying about how many people are coming in, how much money is coming in, how much improvement or building or other things are happening here in this place? And do we fail to worry enough of what is going out, of what is leaving? For this is not what your pastor says, it's that this is what others say. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said the church is the only institution that exists for its non-members exclusively. Is that Pete Steinke said either a church is missional or it is not the church. Is that mission is the nature and purpose of the church, not some list of qualifiers. Because God has a mission, a church arises. That apart from mission, the church is meaningless. Do we believe that? Do we live that? Is that if you think, well, maybe those are just a few. Well, what about when Martin Luther puts it this way, that we live on earth only so that we shall be of help to other people? That, and Luther puts it in only the way that Luther can put it. Otherwise, it would be best if God would strangle us and let us die as soon as we are baptized. For this reason, however, he lets us live, that we may bring other people also to faith as he has done for us. I don't know how many people would be coming forward for baptism if that was the truth. No. If God's purpose is simply to get us in heaven, we're missing the boat. God's purpose is for him to be leading us out into this world as that very reign and kingdom of God continues to come forth. The very fact is that again and again, that very place of the church is that very calling. But the question is that are we preparing ourselves for that very calling? Or do we see this place as a place that we simply receive, as a place that we simply get, as simply this is that place that we find our own self? See, John Stott once put it this way. We so often ask the question of what is wrong with the world today. I'm pretty sure the Bible's already answered that. Shouldn't we be asking the question of what has happened to the salt and light that God has called us to be? See, when I ask these questions of myself, when I ask these questions of our church, that I have to acknowledge the fact that I don't think I've always been the leader that God has called me to be. That I don't think that we've always been the church that Jesus has made us to be. The question is that in our decisions and in our life together, are we asking ourselves the question, is this simply in it for us? Are we willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of others? Are we willing to step out into that uncomfortable place as Peter and the others did in the book of Acts today and jumped into this ministry to the Gentiles that they never asked for and they never wanted? But Peter says, "Who am I to stand in the way of God?" That's a hard question to face. And the question is this: is it a hard question for us to face? That today we celebrate ministries in the church. Today we celebrate the calling of God on our lives. So the question is, are we willing to be changed and transformed by that gospel of God so that we may be about that mission of the church? That will we love one another so that we may live for the sake of others? For that is the reason and the realities that our God has called us to. And so may our God continue in all things to be at work within his church, and may we be those very ones who continue to reflect of how are we becoming the people God has called us to be.